Today on It Chooses You, Art and Teaching Artists with Liz Acosta.
Don't make me go New York on you because I can do it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
If you can do all your stuff, what can figure it out? That's how it chooses you.
Hey everybody, this is Teresa Sparks.
I am Claire Patton.
And this is It Chooses You, a podcast where we discuss things we love.
And today's guest is our dear friend and brilliant artist, Liz Acosta.
Liz Acosta is an artist and a teacher of art based in Boulder, Colorado. And she's also an amazing human being and someone we are very, very lucky to know. Well, thanks for coming and dealing with all this technical stuff. You spend your life in Zoom meetings and you're willing to do it on the weekend. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it very much. Well, Liz, we have asked you to come and talk to us because I originally asked you because I really enjoy the art you make.
Really?
You've shown me one or two pieces and I'm always like, ooh, I want to see more of that. But I also said it would be great to hear about why you love teaching because I know you are a fabulous teacher of art. And you said something like, oh, I don't even think of myself as an artist anymore. I'm not making work. But we want to talk to you about why you love teaching because I know you're a good teacher.
Well, thanks. I mean, I do love it. I end up loving the students, it's such a interesting setup, right? You're randomly given like 12, 15 people and you come together into this space every week and over a 15-week period, slowly, like this intimacy develops because you get to know each other. And at the end, it's hard to say goodbye. It's people reflect back to you like what they got. And so it's rewarding. Immediate gratification, so to speak, because it's right there in the moment. But I do love it, yeah. And it's a process. It takes a lot of patience because in the beginning, I'm just as nervous as they are. And I've had some really good teachers, and one of them, who was a mentor of mine in New York in my grad program, I guess I graduated because we became good friends after I graduated. And we were having a drink, and it was the night before classes started. And he's like, I'm so nervous. I said, what are you nervous about? He goes, tomorrow's the first day of classes. I said, why are you nervous? He goes, I get nervous every year. I practice in the mirror, And he was such a great teacher, and it was surprising to me that he would be nervous at all. But now I understand, because every time it's new, and whatever it becomes is a large part due to what you make it become. So, yeah. So yeah, I love it.
Great. Okay, we're done. Thanks.
All right. That was easy.
And cut. Well, Liz, I have a question about teaching. You are, first I'll say something, you're one of the most compassionate people I know. And
Yes.
You're also one of the kindest and most patient people I know. So you certainly don't have to get into specifics, but I was just wondering if you ever get frustrated with your students.
Sorry. Yes, of course I do. A large part of it has to do with that I see everybody's potential. And like, what are they? They're like 19, 20 years old. And you do want to just shake them sometimes and say, like, you're brilliant. Do something about it, because they have lots of habits that they bring with them. They can't wake up in the morning. They can't finish a project. And when you dig in, like get to know them, dig in a little deeper, I often find they have some kind of, I always call it like a tape loop in their head, that they've been told they're a failure. They've been told they can't do anything right. Something like that is at the root of them blocking themselves from becoming better. And when you can kind of help to clear away some of that and they can see it, it often doesn't stick, I have to admit. But they're like, yeah, oh yeah. There's this guy who could not get to class on time. And his artwork was all done in like perspective. So there were all these tight lines, really perfect, depictions of space and architecture. And when I was talking to him, it's like, what's with the always coming in late kind of thing? I'm paraphrasing this whole conversation for brevity. But yeah, he said, I don't know, I've just always been like that. This is my 5th year in college. And so then we kind of dropped that, but then I went to his artwork and I said, you do this really precise artwork and you're so exact about how you want things, and when it's done, it's just full of this precision. I said, so that part of you, how come that can't become who you are in life? Show up, because you're great. So just show up and be precise in your life and apply more of that to your life. But like I say, it doesn't always stick, because so you can point things out to them, but it's up to them to change it.
But that's so cool that you use their art to show them what's inside of them and what their potential is.
Yeah, I think now I teach this class, the contemplative artist, and that's the whole point of that class for me. Is it's like a mirror. Like if we do these things, it's not for me, it's not for the assignment, really. It's for you to see that this is who you are, this is what you can do, this is how you do it. Why do you do it that way? You don't need to tell me as much as you need to investigate for yourself. Like, why do I always paint like in perspective? What do I love about it? We had a senior show on Zoom last night, an opening, and one of the students who I'd had an independent study with asked me to ask a question during her time. And that's exactly what I asked her. Like, you have consistently done these watercolors over the time I've known you. What is it about watercolor that speaks to you? Why do you consistently choose that medium? What about that and your artwork are like talking to each other and complimenting each other? And yeah, it's because it all is real personable. I mean, I think people who do performing arts, to me, that process is so much more immediate. Like, who you are and what you have to give comes through your body. And with visual arts, there's just enough distance for people to separate themselves a little bit. And so, yeah, I feel like that's one of my jobs, is to let them recognize how much of a mirror their artwork is to them and knowing themselves. So what is your uniqueness? What are you bringing? I've had some real good teachers, and I will say a lot of them, mentors, but models too for me. And I had a teacher who, when I was in grad school, one of the like nasty comments people would make when they did a crit for your show would be like, oh, it's so derivative of so-and-so. They'd mention an artist, and as if then that dismisses everything you've done because it looks like somebody else's. And then I had a professor who said, well, he was an art history professor. He would put 2 paintings next to each other, and he would ask us what the difference is between the 2. Like, on the face of it, they both look like Impressionists, but what's the difference between the 2? And then that's their uniqueness. And that helped me start to look at my work that way. And when I can offer that to a student, like, well, I feel like nothing's original. I look like so-and-so. And, well, what's different? That's your voice. Follow that,
So is art for you, the making of art for you, primarily about finding those things in yourself that are unique and displaying or expressing or showing them to others in some way? Or
well, I think
is there something else going on?
A little more now. I mean, maybe I don't know if I'm a mature artist, but I'm mature in my years.
Well, like 80% of the time you're mature. The other 20, forget it. Look out.
I'll accept that as a compliment, but
you should.
I think it was in grad school that probably because of some good teacher, that I started to look at like what interests me. I suppose this is the only word that's coming up right now, but philosophically. What am I looking at? What am I examining? What am I being drawn to? You know, at that time, I was fascinated by plant life and how even like the idea of a cutting, like we just take that for granted. Oh, you want the spider plant? Here, have a cutting from it. I was fascinated by that you could take a slice of this bigger thing, and from this small thing, a whole nother thing would grow. And so I had this whole series of artwork that was about cuttings and regeneration and plant life and tree life and their parts to whole and all that, because I was so fascinated by it. So I wasn't drawing the plants like a botanical artist would. I was looking at like their structure, relationship of parts to whole. That was what was really interesting to me. And lately it's been more probably really flavored by my Buddhist studies, that I'm really interested in space and potential and energy. And I think without even intentionally, sometimes that's what I end up teaching, because that's where my kind of passion is right now, about what I want to learn about, what I want to know more about. So it wasn't so biographical, which I think as a student, that's a big step to make, when it's less biographical and it takes a bigger view. You know, there is probably some biographical reason I was interested in plants and parts to whole and how things keep living even after they've been cut or separated or severed. And then with the space, it is a lot about, you know, how infinitely vast everything is. I'm pretty fascinated by that. So,
how can I ask you how you would, besides the idea of space and potential, how you would define your work now? What's unique about it now? If you were your own student, what would you notice?
Well, I'd notice there's some consistency in what I was doing. This is a big secret. I usually don't talk about like what I'm doing now, but I'm really fascinated by, for a while I have been, about compressing something, and then depending on the material, it starts to open up. And it could be really slow, or sometimes it's fast, or sometimes it opens and it just falls over, you know. So I've been crushing a lot of paper and material, other kinds of materials. And, you know, my favorite thing, which I still have to go to the art supply store and say, what kind of paper is this? Because there's a poet, Edwin Torres, who was at summer writing program at Naropa last year. And he did a piece, and he used this big sheet of papers, like placed across the stage, like horizontally. And
25 or 30 feet, right?
Yeah. And it was a wonderful performance. He used a lot of like shadow. He went behind the scrim and he did shadow work, and he was reading. And anyway, it was all over, and I was really moved by the poetry. But when he left, when he was finished, he had to get ready for the next artist, and he took the paper and he crunched it all up in a ball, and then he put it on the side while he was talking to somebody. And I was standing in line. I don't know what I was going to say to him, but when I got to him, all I said was, what are you going to do with that paper?
Spoken like a true visual artist.
Right.
Is that, you going to do anything with that paper?
And he like looked at it and he said, I'll probably throw it out. And I said, can I have it? And he said, yes. So I had been doing all this crushed paper stuff. And then when I saw that, I thought, I really have to have that. And I swear that if I ever show it, it's going to be called something like Edwin Torres Writes a Poem.
Yeah. That's lovely. Well, I love the idea of watching, you know, when you crumple paper and you just throw it away, it expands again.
Right.
It's like, I'm not supposed to be in this shape. I have a shape that I remember being in.
What's fascinating me there is that depending on the material, this is inert energy kind of revealing itself, right? Mm. And the paper moves into that space from that crushed, compressed space. It just moves, and so it's like a flower opening up, I suppose, you know. So I didn't even realize there's a connection to previous body of work, you know, that kind of, because flowers opening up, don't we all love to watch the slow-mos of that kind of thing? You know?
Yes, we do. especially in the springtime.
Yeah, it's happening now. So,
well, I think you've said to me before that teaching feeds something in you. And I can't remember exactly how you phrased it, but you've definitely talked about it in those terms.
well, probably connection, connection and mentoring, I guess. It wasn't until like I started doing it that people would refer to me as a mentor. And I at first would dismiss that, like, oh, who, me? But as I taught more and more, I realized how I was offering something just like my teachers had offered something to me. So I think it's that, like, I love being with young people whose minds are growing, and best case scenario, their minds are thirsting for something. They really want to find some kind of meaning. Of course, I'm teaching at Naropa, so, that's the audience too. They're seekers, and sometimes they forget they are, but that's, I suppose, the faculty's job is to remind them of that once in a while, that you chose this place for a reason, because those kinds of that kind of inquisitiveness is really cultivated there. It's like, this is, as an artist, you're inquisitive. You want to know more. So Sue Hammond West, who's the chair of the visual arts, her teacher is Enrique Zelaya Martinez. And when he spoke in Denver, about a year ago, and somebody asked him a question, because his background is he's a scientist and a philosopher, and then he came to painting. So he usually gets the question, what about that, science and art? And he said, well, when you're a scientist, you always have a basis of what you already know, and then you're exploring what you don't know yet. And he said, and that's what art does. There's what you know, and you bring that to any artistic endeavor, and then you're exploring what there is to discover for yourself or in the form. And I just love that quote, and I've been using it in class ever since, because it sort of hands to students like, this is your job. This is what you're signing up for, is to do this for the rest of your life. Like, you finish a body of work and it's like, now what do I want to do? So
what else don't I know?
You're always seeking within your own work to learn more about what else can I do? How else can I say this? What else do I want to say? Just those kinds of questions. Maybe not that directly, but I think that's part of process, is doing that. So
I really love that. Because there's something about, so inquisitiveness, I'll go ahead and say curiosity. And the idea that curiosity is itself intelligence somehow. It seems very counter to the way we think of, when we think of like accomplished scholars, or, people who've done deep thinking about a topic. We think of usually a person sitting in front of a collection of books, and books are all static. They're knowledge, received knowledge, right? But that it's lively somehow. That curiosity is maybe a propelling force. Is quite a lovely idea to me.
Yeah, and so that's another quote that I think really applies. There's like, you learn about, this is based on what Teresa just said. You learn about things, right? So like the stack of books behind you, you could read them all. So in Buddhist teachings, you learn that you have to learn to apply what you've learned. You can't just read the book. You have to apply what you've learned. And the end of this long quote, because otherwise you will know everything but understand nothing. Yeah, it's like, you can read a book. You could read a book about, how to draw, but if you don't draw, you don't actually stumble and make mistakes and learn how to do it better, you're really not going to understand what's involved in drawing. So
that makes me think about not allowing yourself the opportunity to make mistakes. Somehow shuts down what the possibilities you're capable of. Somehow your potential is limited if you don't allow yourself to make mistakes. So
that goes back to, when I said, I'm just trying to show them their potential most of the time. So I love it when we get to talking about mistakes. When a student says, I made a mistake, or because sometimes they give up. I made a mistake and I gave up. I didn't finish the assignment because I screwed it up and I gave up. And so I'll, I don't say it like this, but what I'm thinking is like, no. In art, if you make a mistake, that's a great opportunity, because now you have to figure out, what else can I do? You have choices. You use too much orange and it looks awful and it turned to brown. Okay, now we have some choices to make. What color can you use to counter that? What can you do to incorporate your mistake into your artwork? And it's not a mistake. It was just like a turn you didn't expect to make, So I don't know when I learned that, but I love teaching that to people, because that's something like I'm teaching them with the tools and the colors and whatever project they're working on. But sometimes I hear later that that's a life lesson too. You didn't make a mistake. You just have to make a different choice now. It didn't turn out the way you thought. Oh, gee, is life like that? I think so.
I love that, because it brings it back to inquisitiveness for me, in that it's easy to see mistakes. And if you're a problem solver, as I tend to be, it's easy to see problems and then want to fix them instead of being curious about something. So I love that word curious and that word inquisitiveness, because it's something that I try to work on. I'm not very successful with, but I try to work on in my own life of, let's try and be curious about this instead of fucking pissed off.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all an experiment. It's all an experiment. Yeah. It's just another experiment. Yeah.
I mean, it's being, every artist wants, have you run into this with your theater work and writing, that every artist thinks they have control, like that it's about that to some degree. Like, I know how to do this. I know how to use charcoal, so I'm going to do this charcoal drawing. And in my mind, I'm already like, and it's going to turn out like this.
Yeah.
And then you do it, or you write a play, or you start a novel, and it's like, I started with this, but then I ended up going in that direction. So we don't know what it's going to end up like. We like to think we do because we're control freaks.
Totally.
But it doesn't, right? And that's the play. I mean, I like that part. I like the play that happens, when I have done large paintings, I always say they're talking back to me. Like in the beginning, it's all about the materials telling me like, nope, not going to do that. No, oh, you want to go with, okay, And then,
man, your materials are bitchy.
they are. They talk back, and you keep going every day and working on that painting, and then sooner or later, it's like you're running the conversation, and it's kind of over when me and the painting found this happy medium. It did what it needed to do. I told it what I wanted it to do, and somewhere we landed together. And that's kind of how I know it's done, because it feels settled. So
that's so lovely. I feel like what you're saying is basically the materials are your muse.
We've been doing all these Zooms, like everybody, for every reason, for every meeting, for everything. Zoom. And I was talking to some group and I said, can you imagine if the electricity went out? Like,
oh my God.
Right?
How amazing would that be? I'm sorry, I literally cannot talk to you.
Right. Because I think Boulder had a couple of like little brownouts or something when all this was starting. And I said, that would be it. Like if we lost our ability to do this, this is what's giving people their juice these days, being able to connect online at least, Yeah. So
you've said the word juice 3 times.
I know.
So
and when I said it, I thought you said it again.
But now I have to ask. No, it's good. It's good. It's clearly something you're thinking about. So I would like you to tell me what you mean when you say juice. What are you laughing at?
It's like
Claire's losing her shit.
What is this juice you speak of?
Have you been listening to too much Lizzo? That's the question.
Yeah.
Oh, why does she say it?
Or Janelle Monáe.
Let's see. I don't listen to either one of those people. So
Oh,
I mean,
Oh
not
my
like
goodness.
not like I don't have time to listen to music lately.
do you listen to music when you make art?
Yes and no. I listen to music when it's kind of more, I'm in a mechanical kind of stage. Like I'm repeating, I'm filling areas or blocking something in.
The word stipple is coming to mind.
Yeah, yeah. Something where it's going to be a repetitive kind of thing. And it's also, maybe it has to do with space, because when I had a studio, I listened to music a lot more while I was painting and dancing a little bit, right? Because, when you're painting, you're standing up. So there was some dancing involved, I'm pretty sure. But now less so, because I really like when you get into the zone, you're, at least, I mean, I'm sure it's true for all the arts. My experience in visual art is you get to the point where your mind is so focused and so like aware of what's happening that you don't want to interrupt that. You don't want to be distracted from that. That's where a lot of the juice lives, right there. It's like, and that we've all had these experiences as artists. Is 3 hours felt like an hour. Just it went so fast because you were so connected and present with what you were doing.
When I talk about making art, I often talk about listening to the voices from elsewhere. And they really like it when you forget about time. Like, the reason they like us is because we exist in time, and the things we make are, in a lot of ways, experiences of time, right? That's why they like us, because they don't have that. They don't experience time that way. And so when we're in that flow state, we're actually sort of touching the state that they're in. Mm-hmm. And so they're a little more, they're like, oh, hey there.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Liz, tell us about juice. What's going on with juice?
Juice is energy. It's just energy, right? Maybe it's retro meaning of juice. Like, it's not any hipster new meaning. It's like electricity. My father was an electrical engineer, so he would tell us things about energy a lot. Yeah, my dad was he was very practical. Yeah, my mom was kind of like more all over the map kind of. So yeah, they were very different personalities, but here's a result. So yeah, it's just energy. That's what I mean when I say it, like the students give me juice or help them find their juice or however else I've used it. I don't know.
Well, I have a question for you. That's something I've wanted to actually ask you for a while.
Uh-oh.
So you grew up in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Were you in New York in the 80s?
90s.
You grew up in Chicago and you spent a lot of time in New York. What influence those cities and their cultural importance had on you as an artist?
I guess for Chicago, it's like, isn't like an artist. I mean, my mother was a painter, so I always had that connection.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I don't know if I knew that either.
I used to watch her paint when I was little, like do oil paintings, just sit there and just watch her. And she would take me to the museums, and Chicago has absolutely fabulous museums. And so I had a lot of exposure when I was a kid. Well, by the time I got to college and then started to make like-minded friends, there was a group of Chicago artists called the Harry Who. And unlike all the other art we'd seen or been taught, these were like really irreverent, funky artists that created this Chicago style, the Imagist. And before I even knew about that, I had a boyfriend. It sounds like a commercial. I had a boyfriend in the diamond business. But he worked with this family that owned the business. And one of the sons that worked there, Dennis, his wife was Sue Ellen Rocca, who was a member of the Harry Who. Like, I'm 17 and I'm babysitting for them. And there are all these incredible, wacky paintings around the house. And there was a rocking chair. I rocked the baby. And right next to that rocking chair, coming out of the wall, were two gloved lavender hands. And that was Ted Halkin, who was also a member of this, I don't know if he was Harry Who, but he was definitely Chicago Imagist. So I was exposed to that artwork before I had any idea what it was. And then I met these friends in college who I'm still friends with today. And being in Chicago, being around that at the time, it was really like happening. These artists, and they're kind of funky. This whole kind of funk thing they brought to art was so appealing to me and so Midwestern, you know. So they were a huge influence on me. I'd say like color, shape. They would always depict energy, like little wavy lines and things. And I loved that about them. And then I moved to New York City because I kept reading about artists. I worked in the art library when I was in undergrad. Actually, I worked in the AV closet. That's a less glamorous side of the story. And what I did, so the AV closet was inside the library at Northern Illinois University. And I would hand the professors their slide projectors or their video carts, you know. And then that was only busy when classes were changing. I had a lot of time in between, and I was in the library. So I used to read books, and I started reading magazines, art magazines. And then I started reading what's happening in New York and who all these artists are. And then there's this one magazine I read called Avalanche. And in that magazine, that's how I got exposed to people like Meredith Monk, Barbara Dilley, Vito Conci, people who were doing really like radical things in New York. And so I was really drawn to I want to be there and see what's happening with that, you know. So that was kind of my motivation for moving there. And then being an artist in New York, I mean, gosh, it's like a little dream, you know, because so many people are artists and they're doing all kinds of things, and you see fresh ideas and art made all the time, and it's right down the street, and you can just go check it out. Like beyond eye-opening, it was mind-opening to see some of that work and meet the artist. I mean, I saw Philip Glass play in a church basement, you know, like when before it was right before Einstein and the Beach, so he was at that point in his career. But yeah, so then you just see so much art that is, it's on a trajectory, right? There's seasons and shows and new work, and you know, that artist, and then their next show and their new work. And so that atmosphere was really, I don't know, just really inspiring to be around. So, and then, you know, then I went to grad school because it was about that time my marriage was failing. And I thought, I'm going to go to grad school so I can be out every night doing something worthwhile, you know. So I did that. And I went to grad school at Hunter College and worked full time. But I had a great mentor there, Ralph Humphrey. And I learned a lot, and it's like jumping in the deep end because the competitiveness is there. And I'm not good at that.
I've read a lot about the importance of place in artistic movements, and I've never lived in a place that was happening in that way. And so I envy that and was curious about your experience with it.
Oh, yeah. It was rich. I mean, it was almost too rich. It was like eating, you know, a layered cake every day. You know, you don't get tired
7
of
years of truffles.
Right. Yeah. There's just so much, right? You could hear the best musicians and go to the best art shows and go to theater for like $10. And I had a boyfriend he was a master of like the cheap night with art. You know, we'd go hear some musician and get a drink, $20. And $20 was even an expensive night. You know, go see some small theater company and get a drink. You know, it was always like a $10, $15 night. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then you had people who, you know, my roommate was in a band, and you go see their shows. And I suppose the amazing thing about New York is it's not that intentional. It just happens because there's so many people, you know. So yeah, Yeah, it was exciting. I mean, I'm glad I did it. It was super exciting. So. But great bathrooms, like the other day I thought of Radio City Music Hall's ladies' room. If you ever get a chance, is stunning. And it makes you want to powder your nose. Like you just want to sit in front of the mirror.
What was the worst bathroom you've ever been to, Liz? See, this is being in New York in the 90s. I bet there were some nasty ass bathrooms there.
Oh my God. Well, the first one that comes to mind is there's this like in the village, like the heart of the village, that like the Italian neighborhood, still those people still sit in the tables outside this coffee shop. And I mean, it's an Italian espresso like coffee shop in the village. Classic, right? And bathroom, I don't know why this one comes to mind first. So there's all this like kind of classic New York feeling about it. You got the scene from The Sopranos going on over here, and people are, there's one, Claire, you lived in Italy, or you were in Italy. There's a shaved ice with the coffee and the whipped cream on it.
Oh, like a granita or something?
Yes, they serve stuff like that, the little Italian cookies in the case. So it's all like old New York. And then I went to use their bathroom. It was just like, oh my God. You have to walk up a little step, and then it was just disgusting. It's all painted black, and then there's just shit all over the floor. Not shit, really. There's paper all over the place, and it smelled, and most of them were smelly. Pretty smelly. But I had it was my second bathroom in New York City. Was on 6th Avenue and Spring Street. And it had a little, like, 2 steps up to it. So it was like a throne. And 2 steps up, and then there was a little window next to the seat. And you could see all of Lower Manhattan. Like, it was this great view. And now there's a building next to that window. So,
how much was that apartment, Liz?
My share was $75 a month.
Oh my God.
Shut up!
How many people did you live with?
Just one, just Pat. But it was a 6th floor walk up. So what you experienced a lot of times, your friends going, yeah, I'm here. I'll wait down here for you. Or, yeah, the people wouldn't come up to it because it was 6, lights up. But we had roof access, and that was pretty cool. So we would have parties.
This is the apartment that you told me that during a blackout you went up and sort of looked out over the city during a blackout.
Yeah, my friend Mark and I were up on Lord rest his soul. Mark and I were we were on the rooftop, and we had just made this promise to each other. He's like my best friend. Made this promise to each other that if neither one of us got married, when we got older, we would live together and take care of each other. Mm-hmm. And then the lights went out.
And then the city was thrust into darkness.
Well, what happened was we were just like a half a mile from the World Trade Center. So we were looking at it, and the lights went out like,
oh, cool.
Like that. We watched them go out like
top down.
Top down. And then it was totally silent. And then everybody started laughing. They realized it was a blackout. And that's all you could hear was everybody catching on and laughing, So it was quite an experience, the whole thing, because it lasted like 2 or 3 days. And we made the most of it, I have to say. No, like everybody went to Christopher Street Pier, and there was like the guy with the ice cream cart who still had frozen ice cream. It's like,
Oh my God. Currency. $40 for this chalk ice.
And this is in Soho, was Little Italy. So the Italian boys, young guys who still lived in the neighborhood, were checking everybody out. And they put the flashlight in my face, and they go, "Oh, it's you, ma'am. I'm sorry. Would you like an escort home?" It was very, there was a lot about it that was really sweet. The lights went on first in Chinatown. And so we all got this idea, let's all go to dinner in Chinatown. And we got there, and like everybody was going to dinner in Chinatown.
7 million people were in Chinatown trying to have dinner.
Yeah. And the bars were like trying to sell their alcohol, their beer, because it was getting warm, So there were people went to the bars that first night. and drank as much as they could, I suppose, to help out. The mayor told everybody to stay home, don't ride the subways, because they couldn't ride the subways. There's nothing to ride, so everybody had to stay home. Nobody had phones then, so you would just walk to the next where you hung out to see if your friends were showing up, or go knock on their door and then hang out for the day. Just rambling around the city because everybody was just enjoying like this freaky thing that was happening. It stopped the city, and nothing ever stops that city. So it was pretty fascinating. There were no cars on the roads, just like now, but it was a little more boisterous, a little more fun and boisterous at the time. So yeah, you had to make your own, a lot of your own entertainment then. There's no internet, nothing like that. So we had fun.
Did you know you wanted to teach before you moved to Colorado?
Yeah, I did. I graduated, and my friend Paul Kraniak, he was like chair of the art department at, Teresa, this might be closer to your heart. It was like, he was the chair of the art department at West Virginia University.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I went there.
It's not closer to my heart, but it's closer to my genetic legacy.
Good distinction, T.
I went there, and I went as a guest artist, and I had a sense I wanted to teach by then, but that was my first taste of it, and I love talking to artists about their work, and like when you can get to like deeper things, about it. And so I had a taste of that there, and then I started applying to jobs everywhere. And at that school, I was one of the like 3 finalists for the position, because within a year or so they had an open position. By that time, I was getting this like kind of beckoning to move to Boulder. And I ended up saying to my friend, I'll tell you what, if I don't get this job, then I'll move to Boulder. So I didn't get the job. Said, okay, I'm moving to Boulder. So I talked to my friend Paul, and I said, well, who did get the job? And he goes, this woman from Boulder, Colorado, University of Colorado at Boulder. So that's ironic, So,
and they all rolled over and one fell out.
We switched places. I actually think I won in the long run. So, yeah.
Thanks for listening to It Chooses You. Special thanks today to our guest, Liz Acosta. Your hosts are Teresa Sparks and Claire Patton. Our theme song is by Bobby Dart. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please drop us a line at itchoosesyouPodcast@gmail.com.
Hey, I'm trying to leave. Bye.